Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Charles Lipson, Professor Emeritus at the University of Chicago. Charles, thanks for joining me.
I always enjoy our conversations, Brittany.
You and I discussed President Biden's debate performance after the debate. Now it's nearly 2 weeks later. He has had his first televised interview with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. What are your reactions a few days after that?
There was a famous line that Dr. Johnson said in the 1780s or so about a bear dancing. He says, it's not that it dances well, it's that you're surprised it dances at all. And that's kind of what I thought about the debate, about the questioning by Stephanopoulos. I felt like Biden didn't hurt himself with any huge gaffes. He didn't help himself either. And there's been one point that's been missed, I think, Brittany. We're now nearing 2 weeks past the debate. And Biden has done almost nothing in public to remedy what is solidifying into a clear view that he is no longer competent to run for president and may not be competent to run the office. So it's been surprising that that his staff and family haven't figured out that as risky as it is to put him out in public, it may be even riskier to just keep him in private.
Let's talk about his media strategy, if you will. This morning, Monday morning, he called into Morning Joe, a show that is usually friendly to him. Democrats during the Trump presidency, though, when Trump would call into Fox and Friends, this feels like it's the same move, just flipped for a Democrat. Do you think this is an effective way for him to go, or would it be more effective for him to, I don't know, call into Fox and Friends? Because right now, is he speaking into an echo chamber?
He is, but he needs to, because he needs to solidify a Democratic base that is slipping away. The problem with calling in, however, is that we don't know whether he's just reading answers. So he needs to go on the air. So he's got a problem. He's not going to win over Republicans. He's got to win back the Democrats who are now calling for him to get out. Many of them are. And he's got to win over independents. He can do some of the winning back Democrats by calling into Morning Joe. And he did sound strong and very clear on that. But again, we didn't see him in person. We don't know how much of the answers he was reading and so forth. He can't win back the public by reading from teleprompters at rallies. So he's got to run the gauntlet, and it's got to be, it can't be a gauntlet where all the swords are sheathed. He's got to run through a difficult gauntlet to prove to people he is capable. And we need to hear specifically from the White House what his health problems are, because they cannot get away with simply saying one bad night. People don't believe it.
What does that gauntlet look like? Because he had the debate against President Trump, and we all saw that. He said it was one bad night. That's what he chalked it up to be. Others have said it's more than that. This is an issue, and a persistent issue that has been happening for months. So aside from debating President Trump again, what does he do to prove himself, aside from, because he can do as many rallies as he wants, but that would be reading from a prompter?
He could come on with you, Brittany. If
President
you had the
Biden,
time.
if you're
If you
listening,
had the
anytime. Anytime,
But I mean, in
President
other
Biden,
words,
if you're listening.
he needs to come on a lot of these shows. And remember, you can't get away, as he did in the hiding in the basement 2020 strategy, with calling in to the fun morning guys in Sacramento or something and taking 2 or 3 softball questions. He did that actually last week or the week before when in Philadelphia, calling into a black station And even there, he announced that he was the first black woman vice president.
There was another issue of his team reportedly giving questions to a reporter. She ended up losing her job over that. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I want you to keep quiet about me handing you all these questions,
No,
Brittany.
I know. Before that one part gets clipped out, I will say we have done nearly 1,000 episodes of Forbes Newsroom and Forbes Talks. Never once have we given a single question or received a
Right.
single question. That's just not what.
That's so
That
important.
just doesn't happen.
Tell people what journalistic ethics are about. If I were to call you in advance, I could call you and say, um, maybe we should talk about X and not talk about Y. It would still be up to you, but
Still up to the
I could
journalist.
never give you a
Yes.
question.
Never a question, and it's broad topics only. Hey, Charles, do you want to come on and discuss President Biden, the 2024 race, and the interview
Right.
with George Stephanopoulos? And that's it. So, no politician. Politicians should know, I mean, even if they try, not to give questions and expect the journalist to respond.
Right, but when you're dealing, that's exactly right, and that's journalistic ethics 101. But if you're a very small radio station and maybe a not so experienced anchor, and you have a chance to interview the President of the United States, and his office says, we'd really appreciate it if you would ask him questions 1, 2, and 3, it's really hard to tell them, no, I won't do that, because you may be turned down.
The president or his office definitely put that reporter in an extremely tough position. But going forward, what does his strategy need to be?
His strategy needs to be twofold. He needs to get out on the stump frequently. And though he will be reading from teleprompters, people will be watching him walk up onto the stage. They will be watching to see if he makes any extemporaneous remarks at all, and they'll be watching to see if he stumbles. And the second thing is that he has to take interviews, and he has to go beyond MSNBC. And probably CNN, although I must say, I felt like Dana Bash and who was the
Jake Tapper.
Jake Tapper. I thought Jake Tapper and Dana Bash did a fine job. I thought that they were completely fair and honest in doing it. But I think that the only way that Biden can win back support is to get out and do that. Now, he's going to take a press conference of some sort after the NATO summit. And but one of the things that's interesting about his meeting with people he hasn't met with for several months is that all of those people are coming back and saying, boy, there's a marked decline. I'll tell you what it reminds me of, Brittany. When you have a little baby and you're carrying the baby every day, you don't notice that the baby is getting heavier. But when you see friends who haven't hefted the baby in 3 or 4 months, they say, my goodness, she's twice as big as she was. And that's the problem. They're going to be, but these people are, a lot of the NATO people are also very afraid of a Trump presidency. So they're not going to, they're not going to want to get involved in U.S. domestic politics. And B, they are very reluctant to see Biden pushed aside in Trump's favor. Trump is a tough negotiator. And part of his toughness is he has a kind of walk away threat. And he's already issued that to NATO. He did it last time. If you don't pay up, we're not going to defend you. And his nationalistic policies give that credence. Let me say something about the Democrats' main thrust. Their main policies right now are defense of democracy, which is January 6th, he's a felon, all of that, and abortion. Both are good issues, but abortion ranks relatively low in the hierarchy of what voters say matters to them. For some voters, it's a absolute do or die issue. They won't vote uh, either on the left or the right for an opponent. But I think Trump has positioned himself as a kind of moderate on this. He did so in the debate. Biden will try to mobilize that vote. But the January 6th vote and the defense of democracy, there are two problems. One is that the public now perceives all the court cases against Trump as being part of a deliberate executive branch effort to use the courts against a political opponent. That doesn't look very democratic. Um, and the second thing is, if they try in any way to bypass, if they are able to force Biden out, and they are certainly trying hard, the New York Times, the Washington Post, senior Democrats, they're all lined up, pushing hard, saying things that they have never said over the last year or two when the decline in Biden's abilities should have been evident. But if they try to get around Kamala Harris by a backroom deal, how are they going to claim that they are in favor of democracy when, in fact, Biden won all these Democratic primaries? It's not like he was nominated in a back room. It's true that Clyburn got him passed in 2020 when the alternative was Bernie Sanders. But basically, Biden can say, look, I won the popular vote. If you wanted to come out against me, you should have come out 6 months ago, and you didn't. So now I'm the nominee. So if they try to replace him with Kamala, that's a Democratic problem. And if they try to replace her, it's an even bigger problem.
And that's essentially what he argued in a letter to members of Congress today is, hey, I won these votes. If you wanted to come out against me, 3 people did, and that didn't fare well for them in the primary process. But he's staying in, and this is, I want to read one of his responses to a George Stephanopoulos question and get your response to it. George Stephanopoulos asked this, and if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January? And this is how Biden responded. I'll feel as long as I gave it my all and I did as good as a job as I know I can do. That's what this is about. What do you think about that answer when Democrats have positioned themselves as the party who's fighting to preserve democracy and preserve democracy especially from Donald Trump?
Well, the first thing you notice about the answer, aside from the bad grammar, is that he's giving the answer that parents give to their second graders when they're playing Little League Baseball. You know, just do your best, kid. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. As long as you did your best, that's all we can ask of you. And that's true. But the problem that Democrats face is not that they may just lose the White House. If the president really doesn't make it a very close race, the down ballot candidates in Nevada for the Senate, in Montana for the Senate, in Pennsylvania for the Senate, and so on, are all very much in danger because split ticket voting is not very popular. So I think there's another thing to say about that answer. It shows you why Joe Biden's staff is so reluctant to have him be asked questions that he hasn't prepped for. Because I think if the staff had heard that answer, they would have said, my answer should be 2 things. I don't think I'm going to lose, so I'm not going to take on that hypothetical. And all I can tell you is that between now and November, I'm going to do my darndest to win this election. That's the right answer. But then I'm an emeritus professor at a university and I'm not running for president of the United States. You couldn't give me enough money to do that.
Well, let's talk about someone else who's running for president of the United States, and that's Donald Trump. And he has been uncharacteristically a little bit mute since the debate. What do you think of that strategy?
It's the right strategy. When the other side is in a circular firing squad, shooting themselves, you don't want to get in the way. And it's the middle of summer, so it's not a good time to be talking much anyway. But he did give that one little brief comment when he was on the golf cart, about how terrible Joe was and how Kamala was even worse. But in general, I think that what the Republicans ought to be doing is raising money and building an organization. That's what really matters.
Before you and I got on, I was talking to a historian about the debate and about the fallout thereafter. And he said that the media is doing a pile on job of Joe Biden, isn't covering Donald Trump in the same way, is unfairly covering President Biden. And he said President Trump did lie over 30 times during that debate, and it's not being covered fairly. What do you think of his assessment?
It's an interesting point. I would say this. In a debate, if the other side lies, it's up to the candidate to call them out. And the fact that Joe Biden is now noticing, long after the debate, after his staff has pointed it out, that many of the things that Trump said don't really add up. Those are things that Joe should have said. As for piling on, he's right in a sense, but the question is, why didn't they say any of this earlier? And the second question is, yes, because this is the news. When the President of the United States looks as if he may not be competent to do the job now, to do the job until January, to win the election, that's the story. Trump hasn't changed. Trump is the same Trump. And in fact, that's why he won the nomination. The nomination could have gone to a very conservative candidate like Ron DeSantis, or it could have gone to Nikki Haley. There were other candidates, but those were the principal ones. Why did Trump win? Trump won because he's transformed the party. He's changed it from a country club party into a working class populist nationalist party. Reagan started it, but Trump has solidified it. And this is crucial, Trump proved to be the same guy he was before. He may have lost a step, but he didn't lose, 20 steps. So once the party that he had created saw that he was still the same old Trump, they nominated him. And the media sees that too. They can pile on, but they would be the media has been badly damaged by all this, Brittany. If they did what that historian says, they would be ignoring the main story, which is what they've ignored for over a year. And they would be doing everything they could to help Joe Biden. Right now, what they're doing, I view them as political actors. What they're doing is trying to get him out and get Kamala in, and then they will try to line up behind her. We just don't know what they'll do if they can't succeed in that.
That's a perfect segue to my next question, because the past 2 weeks has really brought on the importance of your vice presidential pick, especially in light of the argument of should President Biden step down or not. As we know, the RNC is next week. President Trump is expected to unveil his VP pick. Who do you think it's going to be?
I want to quote Yogi Berra, the great philosopher. It's really hard to predict, especially about the future. And I think his best bet really would be Burgum, the former governor of North Dakota. And the reason for that is that I think that if Trump thinks he will win, then his biggest problem will be to get control of the government, which undermined him last time, the permanent bureaucracy. the reason, the logic behind picking, let's say, Marco Rubio, is that the Hispanic population is clearly in play and they could go after them. Um, the logic of picking Tim Scott from South Carolina is that the black population, though not exactly in play, is being peeled away from Biden. But frankly, I think that the best nominee would be Burgum if he wasn't going to choose Youngkin. And Youngkin of Virginia would be an excellent choice. The thing to remember about Trump is that if he is elected, the day he takes office, he becomes a lame duck. And so he will want to pick somebody that he is very confident will continue the party along the same lines. And as vice president, he's going to want to have somebody, I think, who can do two things. He's going to want to have somebody who can help him win. I don't think any of the vice presidents really help very much. But I think he's going to want to have somebody who will control the government on his behalf. His chief of staff will be very important. Somebody like some of the people who've surrounded him in the last term.
That's a really interesting point. So do you think that whoever his VP pick is essentially the future of the GOP?
Well, he'll be the person to beat if Trump wins. If Trump loses, the stove blows up and you have to reconstruct the kitchen. But if he wins, then his vice president will be in a very strong position. But Nikki Haley's not going to go away, and some of these other people aren't going to go away. But I suspect that it won't be. When he picked Pence last time, it was because Trump, was not all that well known, and he needed somebody who not only knew the Hill, because Pence had been a senator, but also somebody who was closely connected to the traditional social conservatives in the party. That's just no longer true. So Trump can pick anybody he wants. And I think that the big trade-off is between people who might appeal to certain segments of the population and bring small segments along, or somebody who would be better at managing the government. I've got to say, Burgum looks very impressive, not only because he did a good job running a state, but also because he was a self-made man who made a lot of money. So he's a very competent guy, and I don't think he'll stumble on the campaign trail.
He's come on the program a few times, actually, when he was running for president.
Really?
So maybe if he is picked, he would come back on again.
I think that would be wonderful. Are you going to Milwaukee?
I'm not. I wish, but I will be covering it here live. So I hope next week you will come back on and talk to me about it, break down everything we see at the RNC.
I want to do it, and I just hope the riots in Milwaukee don't spread to Chicago. We have our own riots coming up in July. That should coming up in August. That should be enough for us.
And we will also talk to you in August, fingers crossed, as the DNC goes to Chicago. Charles Lipson, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Brittany.